All right, folks, we're going to wait one more minute to make sure everyone gets a chance to join on. All right, it looks like it's 8:30 on my clock and my watch. So that means as we are letting additional folks in, we are going to start with the Economic Alliance, Snohomish County Coffee Chats. Thank you all for joining, and I know we'll have quite a few others join as we go forward. My name is Gary Clark. I am President and CEO of Economic Alliance Snohomish County, and I am excited about today. But first and foremost, I want to give a quick update and announcement that our economic forecast and annual meeting is coming up at Tulalip Resort Casino, April 27th at 10:30 a.m. And I'm excited to highlight that our keynote speaker is none other than Marita Chang, who is the founder of RoboGals and iPoly and our bot. So we are really excited about having such an amazing speaker come to keynote our annual meeting and economic forecast. Now, without further ado, I have the distinct pleasure of bringing out one of our brightest teammates and government relations people that I have ever met. And it is Misha Lujan of Economic Alliance Snohomish County. She is our government relations manager, and she is going to give us an amazing presentation today. So Misha, I am going to zip it and let you take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. I was just talking with some of our teammates here, and it is quite the challenge trying to distill 4 months of go into a 1-hour coffee chat. So I tried to pick out some of the key items. There was a ton of stuff flying through the legislature. So if I don't have an answer to your question right away, please rest assured that I will follow up with more information. But I'm going to try and be as comprehensive as possible and cover all of the bases here. So before we get things started, I want to kick things off with a question. If you could please type in the chat, what were you hopeful for heading into the 2022 legislative session? What were you excited about? What did you see on the horizon? What were you hopeful for? And as those ideas, a transportation budget, yes, me too, Lance, start flowing in, I am going to get started and talk about some of the things that legislators were thinking about this session. So first off, we had a ton of money, unprecedented revenue. We're talking a $15 billion budget surplus. So a lot of what legislators were grappling with throughout session was, how do we spend this money? What do we do with this? And they had some ideas around homelessness, poverty reduction, obviously transportation we saw pass through, climate, salmon recovery. The governor had a number of proposals that he was hoping would make it out that unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, did not. And those would be HB 1099, that was adding some climate teeth onto the Growth Management Act, sponsored by one of our very own Rep. Doer. And there were also a number of salmon proposals and the riparian buffers. I'm not an environmental person, but somebody out there might correct me. So HB 1838 and SB 5727, which were the governor's riparian bills. They also discussed a lot about labor and workplace standards. There were a number of bills that failed. The nurse staffing ratio bill, 5751, ergonomics or musculoskeletal injury bill, that was 1837, also failed. And then there was another bill, 5801, dubbed as sort of the loser pays for workers' comp appeals. that also failed. But one bill about the transportation network companies and how they will operate, and as we think about the future of work and the gig economy, that did pass. So 2076, it had a minimum earnings guarantee and a number of protections for drivers, and also a preemption. So local jurisdictions can't create a patchwork regulation. They also tackled public safety, the police, some of the police reform legislation that came out last year. They decided, I mean, there was a lot of confusion that came out after they passed those bills. And so this year they worked really hard to clarify, fix some of those instances of uncertainty, and they took on a couple of bills that we'll cover as we approach our thriving communities section. A number of bills also failed to make it out: catalytic converter theft and organized retail theft. So they were thinking about public safety. Some of it got out, some of it didn't, but that is the nature of session. So I'm going to take a peek at what we have in here. I'm seeing some transportation, policing laws, tax relief, long-term care pause. We got that. Woo! East County transportation. Yeah, could use more of that. Transit, definitely. Long-term care, more business-friendly fix. Absolutely. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you all for sharing in the chat. So a few items impacting employers. Thank you all for bringing up the long-term care issue. Obviously, that was a big concern. We might not have a long-term fix right now, but we do have a delay of implementation of 18 months. So that the program will be delayed until they figure things out, deal with whatever legal issues and whatever needs to happen for the implementation. And then another bill passed around a series of voluntary exemptions, military spouses, people living across lines, so across state lines. And then unemployment insurance relief as well. And one thing that I am excited about is Senate Bill 5980. That would be increasing small business B&O tax credit. So it also lowered the raised the taxable threshold to $125,000. As I said previously, the ergonomics bill failed, the musculoskeletal injury bill, as well as the building codes bill. So this one would have required the State Building Codes Council to adopt a statewide building code regulation, and then require that everybody fall in line under those series of codes. If I could have the next slide, please. So to just dive into what our priorities were, we've gotten a little bit of a lay of the land, and now to think about what we were working on heading into session. You all have seen these a couple of times now, so I'm not going to read them all, but you get the idea here. Thriving communities and competitive business environment, we need both, and they need each other to survive and to thrive. We cannot have community health without economic vitality. They go hand in hand. So that's this bucket. Then we had another bucket, next slide, which would be our workforce and talent bucket, making sure that we have folks have the skills required to be successful in the workforce. And in here we had thinking about things in the local level, post-secondary pathways, as well as dual credit, both that's credit in the high school, making sure that data is really robust and that we're making decisions based on data around equity, diversity, and inclusion in the workforce. Next slide. And of course, many people's favorite bucket here. I am so excited of the great work that we've done, that Snohomish County has done, that SCIT has done to get a transportation package passed. Finally, it has happened. Yay. And we'll dive into what all is included in the transportation package in a couple of slides, but highlighting infrastructure here, not only infrastructure as we're thinking about our roads, but also our ports and digital equity and rural broadband as we continue to dive into the 21st century. I guess we've been here for a while now, but the future is now, getting crazier and crazier every day, and everybody needs access to internet to be able to participate in the world that we have. So that is going to be a critical infrastructure component that we need to deal with, and we were able to get some of that done. So diving into the transportation package. Next slide, please. Infrastructure, yes. So the transportation package, it is a nearly $17 billion transportation package over 16 years. I am not going to read all of these revenue sources, but I'll highlight a few key ones. The Climate Commitment Act that passed last year, that's the cap and trade policy. So polluters pay for the pollution that they put out into the world, and they can buy credits to offset it. Then we had a series of federal dollars coming in from both the IIJA, from Reauthorization Act, as well as electrification dollars. The operating budget kicked us a little bit of money in $2 billion. And another item I want to highlight here is the Public Works Trust Fund and General Fund transfers. This was a bit of a debate throughout session. The original proposal included a 6-cent fuel export tax, and our neighboring states receive a lot of their fuel from the state of Washington, and so that would really negatively impact them. They came forward and expressed their concerns. That is stating it lightly. And we removed that, or we legislators removed that component of the proposal. What was then put in place was a $100 million per year transfer from the Public Works account, which people had some significant concern over. So the Senate countered with a $100 million essentially dollar transfer from the MOTCA account, the Model Toxic Control Act account, which is really used for cleanup projects, and has been tapped for transportation previously, but you know, there was significant concern over that as well. Probably more concern over the MOTCA sweep than the Public Works sweep, although both were concerning to folks. What we ended up with was a slightly less of a sweep from the Public Works account. So around $50 million from the Public Works Trust Fund per year, and then an additional general fund transfer to make up the remaining balance there. So there's a little bit of compromise. They made things happen, making everybody a little bit disappointed across the board. And you can check out the rest of the fees here. We'll be sending out a link with all of the details of all of the budgets that you can peruse at your leisure. But we will move on to the next slide for now. Okay, so the spending was broken into two separate categories. We had the Climate Commitment Act spending, that is the multimodal funds. So it was spent in active transportation, alternative fuel and electrification, transit programs and projects, a portion of the ferries, and a portion of a couple of rail items. Included in that is $150 million for ultra high speed rail and $12 million for the 18 and under free fare policy, which also came with a little bit of concern from some transit agencies. Is there some of the transit grants that are included in the transit programs and project bucket at the top there require that the agencies are participating in that 18 and under free fare policy. So that is potentially a little sticking point for folks in community. Like I said, I will be sending out all of these details, but are there any questions? I want to pause if there are any questions on this portion, whether it be the revenue or the Climate Commitment Act multimodal. Please, if you have them, type them in the chat. I'll pause for a few seconds. I'm talking fast, but there's a lot that happened, so I just want to make sure that we cover the bases here. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is a little bit of a different way to view things. I figured you all could use a picture instead of a graph, kind of. So then we have the other bucket of spending. So we have the multimodal Climate Commitment Act dollar spending, and then we have the 18th Amendment protected spending, that's money going into our motor vehicle account. Currently, our gas taxes are protected by the 18th Amendment. They go into the motor vehicle account, and they are exclusively to be spent on our state highways, which actually include our ferries. Our ferries are our water highway system. So it's highways, ferries, state patrol, highway related. So we have $3 billion for preservation and maintenance. We took care of our fish culvert challenge. If you would like a little bit of, I'll give you a tiny bit of background there. We were sued, the state of Washington was sued by a number of tribes who were right in the fact that the state of Washington disrupted fish passage in building of our state highway system. So the state of Washington is obligated to fix that. They are operating under a federal injunction that is requiring that the state deal with the $3 to $4 billion in culverts and fish passage barriers that need to be replaced. So this doesn't cover it all, but it covers a portion of it. So $2.435 billion there. Then some existing projects, new projects, ferries, debt service and contingency. These smaller items here, there's equity initiatives working with WashDOT, PCC for Rail, that's a rail line over in Eastern Washington that moves our grain across the state. And then a tiny bit of sliver of money for aviation as well. 11.39 billion in the motor vehicle account spending. Next slide. So the fun stuff, the Snohomish County projects. I would love if you all would like to take a peek at this list, see what came out. Maybe I missed something, but let me know what you're excited about around transportation. Are there any projects that you see here that you were hoping to see? Opportunities for next year? 522, absolutely, much needed. I am personally, as a new resident of Marysville, really grateful to see the 156th Street Railroad overcrossing and Grove Street overcrossing. Both overcrossings made it in. I'm excited about that. Anybody else out there? US 2 and Highway 9 interchange congestion, absolutely. We need to be seeing more spending in Highway 9, and that's maybe something that we can write on the opportunity list for the future. Poplar Way Bridge, yes. Yes, Linwood, good job, guys. Anybody else out there? I would also like to highlight that the $210 million for the US 2 trestle, that is design and planning and some congestion interchange work. It's not going to get us a new trestle, but it is going to get us to the next step. We're going to, once the next transportation package is in discussion, we will be able to say, we're ready to go, we're ready to build, give us all this money right now. So that's a really positive outcome there. And of course, oh, I almost forgot to mention, I-5 northbound Marine View Drive to SR 529. That project was at risk because none of the bids, there were a number of bids that came back above what the state had budgeted for. And so the state had to increase spending there to be able to complete that project, and we made it happen. And Nicole, yes, something does have to be done about Smoky Point, Arlington. I would also like to add that to the opportunities list for next year, along with a number of projects in East County. Yes, 100%. Next slide, please. Of course, there was also pedestrian and bike safety projects. The North Broadway pedestrian bridge connecting EVCC across the way. That is, I know that they've been working on that project for a number of years, so I'm excited to see that come through, as well as some of the trails in Lake Stevens. And community transit got some major wins here. $30 million, $10 million each for the silver, gold, and green line. We also saw some preparation for Linwood Link in I-5 and 164th. So we're getting ready. This is a multimodal package, lots of focus on transit, active transportation, and a little bit of projects, but there's some good projects that we care about. Next slide, please. And of course, there are other infrastructure items that I would like to highlight. The Digital Equity Act also passed the legislature. That's providing broadband access to lower income folks, and also 1673 broadband infrastructure loans made by the Public Works Board. And also excited to see we got a ports infrastructure package in the capital budget, which we'll talk about when we get to the capital budget component. A couple of bills failed: accelerating broadband connectivity and the micro trenching bill that's putting broadband in public right of way. Next slide, please. Oh, were there any questions on any of the infrastructure bucket before we continue to workforce and talent? All right, workforce and talent coming right up. So first, thinking about dual credit while folks are in high school and post-secondary pathways after folks leave high school, we had a ton going on here. So dual credit program data that passed, all of these at the top: Opportunity Scholarship Program. The Nurse Educator Loan Repayment Program is also going to be beneficial for those high wage, high demand jobs. Concerning apprenticeships and higher education, that's applying Washington College grant funds to apprenticeships to make them more accessible to folks. And also want to highlight the Washington Career and College Pathways Innovation Challenge Program. So more opportunities for folks to get excited about participating in the workforce while in higher ed institutions. A couple of our bills failed to make it through: the Higher Ed Bridge Grant, diversity, equity, and mental health at community and technical colleges. Expanding access to dual credit and concerning dual credit costs, those had to do with, they were very expensive items. I will be real there. That's probably why they didn't make it out. But providing access to more folks to attain dual credit while they're in high school, that's supporting with registration fees and things along those lines. So next slide, please. Early learning in K-12. I just want to touch on a couple of items here because the legislature really worked hard in the previous session on the Fair Starts for Kids Act. So a lot of this year we saw implementation in terms of funding and the operating budget and other little touch-up items to make sure that implementation of the Fair Starts Act goes smoothly. But one thing I'm really excited about in our early learning bucket is application and fingerprint processing fees for childcare providers. We have a labor shortage across the board, but if we can help address the labor shortage within our childcare facilities, we can get more folks back to work and get the rest of, hopefully, or at least a portion of some of the labor challenges addressed. So that is big. And then, of course, also some things that failed the legislature, providing data regarding early STEM metrics, which would have, as we're thinking about STEM and how we make ourselves more competitive as a community, starting early and being able to track what's gone on in those early years is going to be really critical. Next slide, please. Cybersecurity workforce. This is another one of our legislative priorities. And we were able to receive $17 million and $13 million. Whoa, just had a math blank. $30 million overall. That's what that is. Sorry, but opening up cybersecurity options for bachelor's degrees and master's programs at our state institutions and also at community and technical colleges. So that is exciting as well. Next slide. Okay, so we have made it to our thriving communities and competitive business environment bucket. Were there any questions? Oh, really quick, go back one more. Were there any questions on the previous slides, on our workforce slides? Cybersecurity Center. Whoa. Okay. That would be exciting. Nearby, Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, hosted right up the road in Whatcom. Okay, no questions on this. Just want to make sure. I'm throwing so many words at you guys, so I just want to give lots of opportunities for engagement here. So thriving communities and competitive business environment. There were, in workforce housing, there were a ton of investments in affordable housing, invest in the operating and capital budgets. We did, though, see, this is where we're going to see a little bit of a disconnect, where legislators went into session saying that they would like to address housing supply, and they did to a degree in thinking about affordable housing, but there is a subsect of housing that's not necessarily being addressed, and that would be the missing middle component. So there were a number of bills addressing the missing middle housing component that did not make it out of the legislature. ADUs, a transit-oriented
I think Misha probably had a little snafu with her connection. So we'll hold a moment to get her back on, and then we will continue. But as you can see from my screen, I'm looking at the workforce housing elements that she was sharing. But I would like to give just a side note as we wait for her to come back. I actually have some news that I'd like to share based on upcoming events and activities. And I'm hopeful that everyone can still hear me. What we've had discussed in the past is an opportunity to highlight our events coming up with EASC. One of those things is, oh, you can hear me, great. One of those things is our upcoming focus on the State of Everett event, which is March 31st, hosted in person at the Edward D. Hanson Conference Center. Remember, March 31st, you get to hear Mayor Cassie Franklin give an update on all the things happening in the city of Everett. And then actually, we wanted to highlight Snow Code for those of you who are interested in that. That is our diversity, equity, and inclusion effort that has been launched. And so if you have interest in that, please just highlight it in the chat, place your name there and basically say, yeah, I'm interested in Snow Code, have Katie or Annette reach out to me. And last but not least, as Misha gets herself queued up again, we have our next coffee chats. That is March 29th, and we will host the Sound Transit 2022 update presented by their chief executive officer, Peter Rogoff. So again, I have given you a brief update with EASC, and Misha, take it away.
Yes, thank you for that, Gary. My internet decided to randomly shut off in the middle of me speaking. So I apologize for that. And thank you, Gary, for covering the space for me. So in thinking about workforce housing, I was just saying that we have an opportunity because this is something that the legislature has identified that they would like to address. And although they failed to really address it in this current session, I think that the conversation will continue next session. And now that the transportation package is passed, I think there is going to be renewed energy around centering around something else. So that's all I wanted to say there. And next slide, please. So law enforcement officer responsibility. I saw this brought up as something that folks were hopeful that would be addressed in the legislative session, and it was. The legislature heard that loud and clear. So a number of bills passed, HB 2037, 1735, and 1719, all passed the legislature, providing clarification around use of force when people flee, what circumstances force can be used under, requiring that they use de-escalation tactics, and also clarifying that they can use less lethal munitions launchers and beanbag rounds and other items like that to help de-escalate situations before they turn to more deadly options. So that did make it through. A couple of items failed in allowing officers to engage in vehicular pursuit, and just another approach at amending use of force. So next slide, please. And competitive business incentives. This is another area where the legislature said that they would have liked to act. They did act a little bit. We would have loved to see just a little bit more, especially in a year when we have a $15 billion budget surplus. But we understand they took an approach of, they were looking at what one-time transfers can we do to provide relief this year, not knowing if that surplus is going to continue into future years. I get that, absolutely. And we did get some really exciting incentives and tax relief passed down. So the motion picture competitiveness program might sound silly, but other states, our neighboring states, Oregon and BC, but specifically in Victoria, they have huge movie industries. And that's why we see films like Twilight, that it takes place in Washington, but really is filmed in BC. And we see other films like that across the board, but that's just one instance. So 1914 passed, and they actually included it in the capital or in the operating budget, which I'll talk about in just a second, additional funding to make that happen. And also 5849, that was a surprise bill, tax incentives. It was, oh yes, thank you, Mayor, right? Yes, we are. I'm so excited that it's happening and that people will actually start to be compensated for it, and that we're going to be able to attract more people to this beautiful area because it's so unique. And yes, I could talk about that one for days. I'm so excited. But 5849, that's tax incentives for a number of different things. Businesses centered around solar, but not just installing solar, the creation of the solar panels, dealing with the waste, and a number of other items there as well. That was actually a Republican sponsored bill that made it all the way through. And 5980, that was increasing the small business B&O tax credit and increasing the limit that one person can claim as well. Some things that failed that we would have loved to see come through, potentially reducing the state sales tax. That was a bipartisan bill, Senate Bill 5932. 5769 was not a bipartisan bill, but it would repeal the long-term care program and the capital gains tax, eliminate B&O for manufacturing, and provide a little bit of property tax relief for folks. 5957, we advocated hard for and did not see it come through. So not everything can be a win, but that would have reduced the B&O tax rate on manufacturing activities. Sales tax holiday would have been a lot of fun as well. That did not make it through, but maybe next year, especially if these budget surpluses continue. Next slide. Okay, so we're done with our buckets, and I would love to dive into some of our operating budget wins. So $15 billion surplus, tons of money going around. Oh, there is a typo in here. The Small Business Innovation Fund is 34.5 million, not billion. Billion would be great. We would love that, but this is an M. Apologies on that. We'll make sure it's corrected before any slides go out, if they do go out. But we were able to advocate for $34.5 million in the Small Business Innovation Fund. And this is a fund that nonprofits and other organizations can potentially tap into to help support BIPOC and other underserved small businesses. And that is a huge opportunity for our small business community, and just really exciting that we're going to be able to capitalize on those resources. Also, our partner organizations, I don't know if any of these lovely folks are here today, but Small Business Development Center received $1 million. Procurement Technical Assistance Center, PTAC, got $1.4 million. So that's exciting to see our partners receive a little bit of funding as well. Then we also saw some really great investments in specific industries. Hospitality Industry Business Assistance received $100 million. And the Arts and Heritage Business Assistance Program is going to be putting out $20 million to arts and heritage businesses. Then some small business, both disaster recovery fund and resiliency network expansion. As I said, motion picture tax incentive, they put $15 million into it. Mayor Wright, we're excited. And also another exciting thing, equitable access to credit and community development financial institution grants. These are grants available to businesses that wouldn't have otherwise had access to other financial institutions for whatever reason, but providing access so that all kinds of folks can start businesses and start contributing to this lovely economy that we have growing here. So in the operating budget, were there any things that folks were excited about here? I see, obviously, the motion picture program. And is Helion? Maybe we can follow up. I'm not actually sure, Robert, on that question, but we can follow up with you there. Or maybe somebody already has in the chat. But yeah, exciting stuff in the operating budget. And I should point out that the operating budget is about 10 times bigger than the capital budget and the transportation budget. It's huge. So I think that the spending that we put in place this year brought us up to $64.1 billion in spending, I believe, in our state budget. And also to back up just a little bit and talk about the operating budget more broadly, there's three budgets: operating, capital, and transportation. The operating budget covers most of things, the operating costs, staffing, programs, anything of that sort. The capital budget covers the actual physical construction and facilities and other infrastructure, like actual construction stuff. And the transportation budget obviously covers transportation infrastructure. So yeah, operating budget, huge, tons of stuff in here. Not 34.5 billion, but 34.5 million, still impressive, right? It's still impressive. Next slide, please. Diving into the capital budget, we got some money for our ports in the port infrastructure package, $16 million. And we also got, I forgot to put the number there, but 2.5 million for the shovel-ready site development program. That there was an accompanying bill, House Bill 1958, sponsored by our very own Rep. Berg, that did not make it out of the legislature, but we received some money in the capital budget, so that is a positive. And then, of course, competitive grants administered by Public Works, the Community Economic Revitalization Board, and Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. So tons of funding, even though the capital budget is significantly smaller than the operating budget. Excuse me. Water. Excuse me, we still see some pretty significant investments. Thank you, Julie. Also, 12 million in capital budget for Community Recovery Center in Linwood. I knew I was going to miss one, at least. There's so much out there. And you see on here, whether it's on here or it's in your community, what are you excited about in the capital budget? Mill Creek is getting some good money, the Interfaith Family Shelter in Everett, Recovery Center in Linwood, Evergreen Health in Monroe, and the Darrington Wood Innovation Center is receiving 1.7 million as well. So excited for that. Any questions or comments on this component? Oh, wait, I think we might be at the end. So having taken in this fire hose of information and numbers and bills. Can we go to the next slide, please? So you will have the opportunity to ask me questions, and I have a question for you before we dive into that. But what did you like here? What did you see? What happened during session that you bringing it back to the top? Maybe something that you knew previously, something that you learned. What did you see here today that inspires you, brings you some level of hope, joy, anything good? Don't be shy. Well, if you don't have anything, that's fine as well. I'm excited about a ton, clearly, and I think there's a lot to be excited about. Yes, too many to mention.
Misha, I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Uh, can you answer this question for me? I think, how can we as citizens stay informed about laws being considered by the legislature? Is there one that you can answer for us?
Absolutely. So we'll send out these links in the follow-up, but just following the state legislature website, you can sign up for email alerts on your favorite committees. And you can follow, you can get updates on your favorite legislators if you'd like. That's one place where I gather a lot of information, is signing up for specific legislator updates. So you can learn all about what those folks are working on, and it gives you kind of a broader, each of the caucuses, both the Senate, I should say all four of the caucuses, Senate Republicans, House Republicans, Senate Democrats, House Democrats, all have their own sort of newsletters that go out that you can sign up for as well. You can follow #WaLeg on Twitter. That is a fun place, especially during the session, to see all of the craziness play out, all the late night screenshots of legislators looking tired at 1 a.m. Yeah, there's a lot going on the internet, but definitely following the state website, leg.wa, that's leg.wa.gov, and the budget website, fiscal.wa.gov, and we'll send these out as well.
Okay, Misha, I have one final question. How can people help and get involved, though, with advocacy work?
Definitely. So you can definitely participate in our advocacy board. We talk about some of the great work happening, and we bring speakers to talk and learning about all of the great things in the advocacy world and how to engage as they come up, because that's the thing with advocacy. It's constantly happening. The conversation is constantly rolling, and you have to be always sort of watching what's happening in all levels. So I would say staying involved in that group, and also just reaching out to your legislators, build a connection with them. This is a citizen legislature. They do have other jobs typically outside of being a legislator, but a lot of time their job is to respond to their constituents. Their job is to serve their constituents. So get in touch with them. That is one way to stay connected. And then as things come up, as challenges or difficult issues come up, you'll be able to say, oh, I have a relationship with this person, or I know that this person always responds to my emails when I email them. So getting those connections started before you have an ask is a good way.
Okay, great. Well, if you want to remove this
oh yeah,
PowerPoint slide, we can, there we go. All right, we see faces. So Misha, did you have any additional items or thoughts? And folks, this is an opportunity to dig in and ask some pertinent questions if you haven't already, or just make comments. Misha, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, absolutely. I welcome comments. I will say I am seeing Mayor Wright's comment of we have a long ways to go with housing. I really agree with that. And especially as it has been identified as a priority, I think it's important that we continue to remind them that they did identify that as a priority and we should continue to work on that. So yeah, I agree with that. And in the move ahead Washington transportation package, it's not the full thing that we would have loved to see in a transportation package, but it has so much good stuff and it gets us to the right next step. Senator Leas always referred to it as a bridge package. And I really do see it as that, as connecting us to the next level when it does come up, because we are, maybe we won't see record, hopefully we don't see record surpluses forever. Maybe we do, but that's something that will be addressed next time up. Kelly, do you have a question? Oh, let's see here.
Yep, there you go. You're unmuted.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. I was like, I can't hit the button. It's not working. I just want to say thank you to Misha and Gary for all the support. This legislative session just knocked it out of the park. I think it could have gone sideways so easily, and there was a lot of heavy lifting going on here. So congratulations, and thank you so much for the partnership with the county, the cities, with SCIT, ICC, and others. It really is incredibly valuable. So thank you.
Thank you. That is the goal.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And I think Misha did an amazing job this session, just hitting the ground running. So really appreciate the hard work and engagement with a plethora of organizations across the board. So thank you so much. Again, you can raise your hand if you have a comment to make to Misha or just in general. It's a great opportunity. We have a little bit of time left. And Misha, if you have additional thoughts, you can speak here. I see Bob has his hand. Is that a high five? Is that what that is? Okay. All right.
I will say if you have items to add to our opportunity list, now is the place to let me know, or you can always email me if you feel more comfortable doing that. My cell phone should be on my card as well, and on my email if you would like to connect that way either. So building the opportunity list now. Advocacy starts immediately after session ends. It's not like a month before kind of thing. So we're doing it now. Robert?
Yes, I'm from the League of Women Voters, and we actually do send out a weekly legislation update. And it talks about how the league supports, but we also just basically try to get everybody involved by just basically trying to put it out. And we have topic leaders who basically have very good information on what the bills mean, how they're doing it, and how they'll succeed. So it's a very quick update conversation, and it's free. Everybody could go to the League of Women Voters website, and they could basically get signed up for the legislative, and it's a very good thing. And up here in Snohomish County, we actually have a separate group of League of Women Voters in Snohomish County that meet on a Tuesday after the session and basically go through, and each of us pick a topic, and we basically tell people what's about it and what they need to do from an action standpoint. So I just wanted everybody to know the league is very active in what goes on down in Olympia.
Thank you. And I can confirm that as somebody who's previously worked in Olympia. I have seen the League of Women Voters. They're very active over the years, and yes, you all do great work. So thank you for that. Providing that access is really important. Jeannie?
Hi, good morning. I just want to echo everybody. Amazing job, you guys. There is such a wonderful amount of money for small business. My question is that money going to be dispersed through the Department of Commerce through the ADOs, or is it going to go straight from the Department of Commerce? And my second question is do you know whether or not the governor's strategic reserve fund was increased, or is it about the same?
I believe it was increased, but I will follow up on that question. And And the other two items I will also double check, but I would say both. I think that there are grants that are going to be coming down distributed through the ADOs, and then some direct relief grants from the Department of Commerce as well. But yes, let me make note and I will follow up on
Thank you.
getting you those details. Absolutely.
All right, Misha, I think it looks like we may have exhausted the questions and comments thus far. Do you want to give any parting remarks?
Sure. Yeah, I would just say that my first session as Government Relations Manager for Economic Alliance has been incredible. Such a whirlwind, so much happening so fast, but working with you all, working with our partners out there has made it so much easier than it would have been in operating in a silo. Yes, I did a great job. Thank you. I'll take that. But I literally couldn't have done it without you all. So really grateful for your partnership along the way, always engaging me and like knowing that you can talk to me about something, even if it might not be something that ends up on our legislative priorities or whatever reason, that conversation is always open. And I'm always here to just talk about what policy is on the table. If you have any questions, if I don't know an answer, I'm not going to lie to you and be like, yeah, I know that. I will always follow up. So just reach out whenever. I'm a resource here for you. That's my job.
Well, I was just thanking folks in the chat about the pig, Misha. But this is amazing. I think one of the things I'm really excited about is just finding Misha to join our organization and being willing to just step us up a level. And I think this has been amazing. And I know most of this is tied to the collaboration with many of our organizations. And so just to be clear, Economic Alliance Snohomish County, obviously we support and look after our business community, but we cannot do that without supporting and looking after our municipal leaders and our partners who are in the public sector as well. So this is a collaboration of both sides of the coin, and we really, really appreciate your engagement. Now, with that being said, I think you all know what time it is. We are going to give you a little bit of your time back, but if you happen to have the ability to go on screen, I understand if you can't, but if you do, this is the time where we raise up our coffee cups. And today, I think we should do it in honor of those who have done an amazing job during this session, including Misha and others, and Kelly and so many others. And don't forget, as being listed below in the chat is our forecast, our annual forecast and annual meeting, economic forecast and annual meeting link. If you please would go down there and register today. We have about a little over a month before it's time to show up, and Marita Chang is going to bring an amazing presentation. So raise your coffee cups and solidarity and support of those folks who went through an amazing session, and we got a lot of things done. So I appreciate your work and efforts across the board. Thank you all for being with us today. Coffee Chats, Economic Alliance, Snohomish County. Thank you, Annette, Katie, Misha. Amazing job.